elections. Can a Human Rights and Accountability Network here in Akwa Ibom State, Atwecom Franklin Isong, joins us live on Political Spectrum. Good morning to you, and many thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, Raymond, Ita, and good to be here with you today.
Thank you very much for joining us as well, and the scarcity that followed both the old and the new notes, a policy of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And quite interestingly, we're still having pockets of reports of hardship occasioned on Nigerians by asking. We've heard reports that money is finally flowed in several states across the country. You are somewhere in the state capital. I wonder, from your observation, I've likely going away.
Well, I want to say that I have not seen money flooding the banking offices or the banking sector in Akwa Ibom State. I have not seen the crowd of people and gather more information as to what is happening with regards to the Supreme Court order that the old currency and the new currency should operate hand in hand concurrently, pending the old 200 naira notes. I did not see the redesigned 1,000 naira, the redesigned 500 naira, and the redesigned 200 naira. All I saw in the banks that I visited yesterday was the old 200 naira notes. And I can say Globus Bank, UBA, I did not see the redesigned 1,000 naira note, 500 naira note, and 200 naira note. What I saw was 200 naira, the old, now recycled 200 naira note, which the president, in violation of the Supreme Court, even at that, the currency was dirty. They were torn dirty and looked so. In fact, it looks like they picked it from the garbage, and some of which were eaten by, looks like. So this is what some banks were issuing out to their customers, and they were paying as low as 5,000 naira. Some were paying 2,000 naira. Some were paying 3,000 naira. I found out that most of these banks, or what I gathered from the bankers, was that they have the ones that have much branches, like for example, Zenith Bank, that has more branches. So if, for instance, the central bank is distributing, say, 30 million naira per bank in Akwa Ibom, a bank that has 5-6 branches is given the same amount of 30,000. The bank has to share the money into the 6 branches. The one that has 2 branches will share the money into 2 branches that has higher customers than the others. You just share the money at flat rate. That is why you see in some banks you will see queues, and you will see more crowd than the other banks. And that is why also some banks were paying 2,000, and then some were paying 3,000, some were paying 5,000, some were paying 10,000, depending on the volume of customers that they have. So this is what I experienced yesterday, because my duty is to ensure that I see how the policy of the central bank, how it's working, whether it is working or is failing. And from what I have experienced, what I have seen, I don't see it working. I rather see it imposing more hardship on Nigerians. I see it imposing more difficulty and stressing.
Seems unchanged with reference to President Buhari's refusal to comply with the Supreme Court's directive that ruled that the old and the new notes can run concurrently, pending the determination of the hearing that's been slated for tomorrow. In your own words, Mr. President disrespected the Supreme Court's judgment. Is your position on this likely to change in the face of the fact that nothing has seemingly...
My position has not changed. The stand of my organization, the Center for Human Rights in Akwa Ibom, has not also changed. We take side with the law. We stand by our constitution because we are operating a constitutional government, because we are operating a democracy guided by rules, and because we don't want a bad precedent to be set by Mr. President. Because if a president cannot obey the Supreme Court orders, it will be setting a very wrong precedent. It will make the judiciary, it will make rubbish of the judiciary, and that will not speak well of our democracy. And the president has just 3 months at most to stay in, like bridging the rule of our constitution, and by bridging the order of the Supreme Court, he will be setting a very wrong precedent where you will have a president come on board and violate the rules of our constitution and violate the rules of democracy, and he would cite instances and then using President Buhari as one of the instances of which the Supreme Court order was disobeyed.
The elections, of course, are coming up this weekend, and there's been different views and divergent opinions as to whether or not the elections should go ahead in the face of the hardships that Nigerians are facing, occasioned by the Naira redesign policy. Let's start from the position of INEC. We are told today they would be meeting with the Central Bank of Nigeria to iron where physical cash is required. Assurances have come from both ends, the CBN and INEC, that paucity of funds would not be a problem on election day. But what about the electorate? Do you feel that the lack of money could hinder the turnout of voters on election day and possibly lead into widespread voter apathy?
To believe that the scarcity of funds, the intendment of those who had made this policy is to truncate a smooth democratic practice in Nigeria. Because I have never seen where close to election we are having such a policy where Nigerians are made to stay at home. What you see today is like the government telling you to stay at home. You don't have the cash to go out, movement, the cash and the fear. And so I think that those who had come up with this policy that has imposed difficulties and hardship on Nigerians must have thought of how to truncate our democracy, and they now came up with this policy direction may not be acceptable to Nigerians. That is what I am tempted to believe. And I want to urge Nigerians to, in the midst of this hardship, still go out there to cast their vote, because good things come out from difficulties, from challenges. Everywhere you have difficulties, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And so today, to go out there and effect a fundamental change in our country by voting in people who have the passion for Nigeria, people who are pan-Nigerians, people who believe in the progress of Nigeria, people who believe in the rule of law, people who believe in
President Buhari's nationwide broadcast. We had all had expectations that the Supreme Court would, deliver some sort of ruling on February 15, which was the initial date set for the hearing of the suit filed by the state governors challenging the Naira redesign policy, until, of course, the matter was adjourned till tomorrow, Wednesday, February 22nd. Supreme Court ruling. Do you have high expectations that whatever comes out of tomorrow's sitting at the Supreme Court would not lead to more legal tussle between the executive and the judicial arm of government? Or perhaps Mr. President will finally give way to respecting the rule of law and complying with whatever directive the Supreme Court gives, considering he's already disregarded the first one. So who's to say that he will comply with whatever judgment comes out from tomorrow's sitting?
Judgment 2 weeks ago. It order rather 2 weeks ago, and it was an interlocutory order that the two currency, the old and the new currency, should continue to coexist as legal tender in Nigeria, pending the determination. Fresh application to be joiners. You have more governors, more states applying to be joined in the suit, and so the Supreme Court now asks that all parties should consolidate the matters, and then now adjourn the matter to the 22nd, which is tomorrow. The Supreme Court also stated clearly, knowing that an interlocutory order only lasts for 7 days and has expired. And so the Supreme Court now extended the interlocutory order it ordered in the previous hearing to the 22nd. And so the president disobeyed twice the order of the Supreme Court. The first, and so in the face of this, I do not see anything concrete coming out tomorrow because the Supreme Court justices are human. If the president of the country, who is supposed to give effect, who is supposed to obey and ensure that the laws of the Supreme Court, are obeyed and enforced across the country, can be the one to stand on the head of less. And so, what I foresee for tomorrow, I foresee a frustrated Supreme Court not being able to issue out orders that will be obeyed, because if the order that the court gave, which was for a temporary relief that let this currency coexist, is disobeyed by the president himself, and the president came out with or not to hear from the outcome of the court, that the president coming out in a broadcast telling the country, telling the world, being aware of this, I choose to disobey the order of this court, and I choose that this is what I will do for the country. And he went ahead to make pronouncements for me, shows a high level of disregard to our constitution. And so I see a frustrated Supreme Court coming up tomorrow with orders that may not also be obeyed. And you have barely 3 days to elections. By tomorrow, you have just 3 days to election, and so the Supreme Court will just say, well, since this, that's what I see, because from what I deduced from Mr. President's broadcast was that, this particular policy is meant to checkmate vote buying. That is what the president keeps hammering, and to checkmate corruption, to checkmate those who have fast money, billions in their houses to buy vote. That is what since it is all about politics, it's all about it's all about the outcome of tomorrow of the Saturday's election. Let us allow it to be. After all, Nigerians have passed through a lot. It's just about 3 days to go. So my take is that Supreme Court justices will be seen as handicapped. They will not be able to come out to bite, like, for contempt of court. And let me even add this: you don't need the Supreme Court to carry arms. You don't need the Supreme Court to carry weapons to whip the president and the CBN governor. You need, would have, reconvene and commence impeachment process of the president, because a breach of our constitution is an impeachable offense.
Well, now that you've mentioned it,
got to the point where the president came up to address the country that he wasn't going to obey the orders of the Supreme Court. For me, it's an impeachable offense. And what go through with that?
Interesting. Well, now that you've mentioned it, that the National Assembly should have reconvened from its current recess to address the impasse occasioned by President Buhari's new directive and his decision not to comply with that broadcast last week, said he was quite disappointed that Mr. President did not comply with the Supreme Court ruling. However, he said the decision to recirculate the old 200 naira note was a right step in the right direction. But he further went on to say that they would have to seek the president's approval. And when he talked about mentioning or allowing or seeking for the president's approval before the new note, or the old notes rather, could be recalled and circulated back into the economy, doesn't this amount to abrogating? So to share or get your thoughts on this, whether you feel the 1999 Constitution has abrogated way too much power to Mr. President, so much so that this example could be a bad precedent for incoming presidents the next time that we're faced with a constitutional matter such as this.
On the one side of his position, I would disagree with him on the other side of his position. He said I would seem to agree with him is that the president had already made a pronouncement that the 200 note is illegal. The apex court of the land, after the Supreme Court, if it made a pronouncement, you can only appeal to God Almighty. And so you are bound to obey whatever the Supreme Court says. And in legal studies, if you're a student of law, you will be taught saying that the 200 note, 500 note, 100 note are illegal tender, that its legality will terminate on that pronouncement. This is the court of the land saying these currencies should still be valid should still be in circulation pending until when this matter that is before me is resolved. And so to that extent, I disagree with due respect to the Speaker of House before the 200 note will be brought to the circulation. It is not right because the Supreme Court had already put aside the deadline that was set by the central bank, which was on the 10th of February. So by that Supreme Court that they gave for its legality. So the court says that the currency remains valid and the law is what the court says it is. That's one. Now, on the other question that you put across to me, my group is saying, is that you cannot have a constitution that allocates over 63 items in the constitution to the executive, to the federal government of Nigeria, and you allow only few diving into the, you can call it the Red Sea, because you don't have a country where you have power, you have natural resources, you have waterways, you have aviation, you have telecom, exclusive legislative list of our constitution, which is where the president will sit and then make power and then decide how they are, how they function, and which is why you have difficulty in police. They don't even when you have the commissioner of police posted to a state, you have the army commander posted to a state, they are still taking orders from the president. You have a state governor that will tell the CP of the state or the commander of a state or the DSS officer or DSS boss and say, this is what I think we should do. Even when they have a security meeting in the state, they will still have to recourse to what the president wants them to do. You could recall what happened in River State when Mbu was the CP of River State. We have said that Mbu was like not having the protection that he ought to have as a governor. You could have the CP of a state working against a sitting governor, mobilizing against a sitting governor, and nothing happened. So we said then that we had two governors. We have two governors in River State where you have the security agencies to be able to police their state. So this is because the Constitution, empowered the president and made him the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. President is handling foreign affairs. President is handling several issues, internal issues, and the rest. And our position has been that the Constitution is a faulty one. It was forced on us by the military that claimed that we, the people of Nigeria, came together and sat. We never sat together to agree that the Constitution should be functional, should be operational. But because we were in a haste to get the military out of government, we came up with decree decreeing our Constitution into existence. The current Constitution came into force by a decree of the military. And so what we need to do, because of political interest, we keep failing because it comes at the wrong time. Now we are talking about the issue of local government and local government autonomy. You don't have it. You see how the state government controlling it. You talk about the funding that goes to local government, it first must the only way out. You could even have an angel as a president. But if you don't have a better constitution, a better law, I tell you that the president becomes super president and acts arbitrarily take to impeach him. Why is it difficult for the senators, for the reps to come out and begin to initiate this process? I could tell you it will fail because of the party politics. The party will tell you that their supporters, their members who are in the National Assembly cannot be able to bite. So that is where we are finding ourselves. So back to your question, I think and I believe that we need to begin to remove the powers of the president. Better Nigeria.
Well, it appears that the Naira redesign policy has to an extent been politicized, perhaps alluring to the fact that it has happened around the electioneering period, as we've already mentioned. Some political parties including its presidential flag bearer, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, openly coming out to say that some alleged fifth columnists are working with some perceived moles within the APC to wrongly mislead. On the other hand, seem to have favored this policy initially, but it seemed to have had a rethink. Just yesterday, he issued a statement to question the rationale behind the policy, because he now said the hardship on Nigerians was way too much. Can you vouch for Mr. President's neutrality as far as the Naira mobilizing resources to truncate the electoral process when the elections come around?
First, Mr. President is a party man, the chief marketer of the APC candidate. And so the policy of the APC government, the achievement of the APC government under Mr. President will be used as the basis to rate the performance of the APC government. And so, because we are operating a political party democracy, because you are operating a system where you have the president voting as a party man, the president can never be neutral in the forthcoming election, because he is a party man, and his party, he did not mention his party candidate. He only said Nigerians should go out there and vote the best person for the position. That he was only paying lip service to Nigerians. But after, as a campaign tool, where the president has lifted up the hand of his candidate in a rally, president has been attending a rally with his candidate. President has even made a broadcast where he said his candidate should be supported. And so, how then can we say president will be neutral in the process?
Not holding forth to vote for any candidate or political parties of their choice. Well, the onus is on him, as you've said, as the biggest and the number one marketer of the APC, to campaign for the standard bearer of his party. But what about his much cherished legacy of conducting free, fair and neutrality?
You see, I risk saying that Mr. President is speaking from both sides of his mouth. Because when he says that Nigerians should vote for the president, the candidate of their choice, rally, he speaks in support of his candidate, and then in the other hand, he will say, vote for the candidate of your choice. So one is not able to be bold and say that should do. You should not be, because he is, like I said, he is an ambassador of the APC, and so most times when he is being attacked by the APC chieftain, by the APC leader of working, because these are what will be used as the basis to rate the performance of the APC government. Don't forget that I told you before that it is the party logos that are going to be placed on the ballot papers. You will see the picture of Bola Ahmed Tinubu, you will see the picture of Atiku Abubakar, you will see the picture of Peter Obi on ballot papers. You will see the party logo, and here the party logo is the APC logo, which Mr. President used the party successes and achievements to rate the president, to rate how Nigerians will vote. So the president being neutral, the president's posture of neutrality is in doubt and is questionable.
Right, an accountability network, CRAN, as equally back